is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Gasim Cement, the nation builder, as well as Vodafone. They've spent weeks in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. The National Security Secretariat has come under barrage of criticism and also incurred an onslaught of public outrage for blatant violation of fundamental human rights of the same public they are supposed to serve. They brutalized a journalist, and some top officers are accused also recently of an irregular raid on a casino where a journalist was also allegedly assaulted in Asenkregua. Now, several top officers are currently a subject of high-profile investigation. Well, tonight, finally, the National Security Minister is speaking. Kandapar has gone public to make a pledge.
And may I assure all Ghanaians that we pledge to respect the rule of law, fundamental human rights, and freedoms of all Ghanaians as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution of Ghana.
But it has a condition.
And may I assure all Ghanaians that we pledge to respect the rule of law, fundamental human rights, and freedoms of all Ghanaians as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. But let me also caution that the respect for human rights must not be compromised with strategic threats to national security. And let us all agree that without a secure, without a safe environment in the country, we cannot pursue development, and for that matter, government may not be able to improve the living conditions of our people.
Now, one of the biggest challenges with Ghana's national security, as was pointed out in the Emil Short Commission report, was the lack of coordination between the various branches and aspects of the national security architecture. Well, the National Security Minister, in adoring this policy document today, stressed how they expect that the content will help properly coordinate the various branches of the National Security Secretariat. And he points out how this has become a challenge because Ghana, for decades, have failed to put in a clear policy that will coordinate the affairs of national security in the wake of the recent threats to our own safety.
Over the years, the various ministries, departments, and agencies in Ghana operated without any concerted national security strategy. This brought about uncoordinated efforts in addressing issues of common concern. And it is worth emphasizing that the national security strategy, which we launched today, is the outcome of sleepless nights of the working group. And I'm happy to announce that this document has been reviewed by all the relevant stakeholders, by internal and external security experts, who have ensured that the document met the international standards and fit for the purpose. And I'm particularly grateful for the willingness with which former security couples from both sides of our political divide display in helping us to produce this document. Evidently, the threats that confronted us as a country decades ago have evolved faster and with greater intensity than anticipated. And this, Your Excellency, underscores the need for the swift implementation of the national security strategy to decisively mitigate new and emerging threats.
We're also getting a bit more detail about what this national security policy is and will do. The president spells it out in clear terms that it will hopefully promote Ghana as a tolerant, a socially cohesive, peace-loving, and a people that believe in security and constitutional democracy, especially in the week when Ghana is coming up for elections as we bid to return to the Security Council of the United Nations, where we are pitching and putting forward our peace and security credentials. Listen to the president speaking at this outdooring of this national security policy.
The overarching vision of the national security strategy is to maintain Ghana as an open, tolerant, socially cohesive, peace-loving, people-centered, secure, united, and prosperous constitutional democracy that upholds the rule of law. The National Security Strategy also aims to establish Ghana as a land of opportunities with the resolve and the capability to protect her people, her culture and her values, to spur growth, development and prosperity that inure to the well-being of her people, whilst positioning the country to play a meaningful and influential role at regional, continental, and global levels. Further, the strategy underlines the unique characteristics of the risks and threats confronting our nation within the context of an evolving world and proposes new and innovative ways to deal with the numerous emerging security challenges. It is further geared towards strengthening state response to current and future threats, whilst enhancing our prevention, protection, and response capabilities. Once operationalized, the strategy will optimize the effectiveness of the security and intelligence sector by revamping current systems and structures. The strategy will prioritize the effective use of resources to promote effective decision-making through an institutional system that will ensure integrated and efficient cooperation in all spectrums of national security. It is important to note, however, that a strategy, regardless of its potency, cannot yield desired results until successfully implemented. Our success will therefore be based on how we implement the national security strategy.
Professor Kwesi Henning is the Director, Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Also joining us is the ranking member on the Defense and Interior Committee himself, a former Deputy Interior Minister, Mr. James Agaga. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time here on Top Story. I have Mr. Agaga on. Hello, Mr. Agaga.
Hello, Evans.
Yes, I'm just curious. I mean, I heard the minister suggest that they've consulted broadly on this, and present and former, appointees within the security space have been consulted. I wonder if they tapped your brain at all on this.
Yes, Evans, I can confirm that there was broad consultations with regards to developing a national security strategy. So we were not left out as Parliament. We were neck deep involved. We held a series of seminars, and when the strategy was in the form of a draft, we had the opportunity to thoroughly discuss its content. So it is indeed true that the security strategy, which was launched today, was as a result of the collaborative support of the stakeholders in our security.
Stay with me. I want to bring in Professor Eni, who is just joining us. Prof, I mean, what a time to bring this up. I mean, they're coming on the back of the last few weeks when the national security has been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Assault cases, you've been on record to criticize them. Timely to have this at this moment?
Well, let me make this point. Always having a reference document, irrespective of its weaknesses and gaps, is a useful starting point. But for the historical record, in 1963, there was a National Security Act. So probably this has been building on that. But I think this is a useful step in terms of all the rather disturbing, unacceptable developments since the Iowa West spoke on violence and the subsequent short commission report, and then what we just noticed with the journalists.
there is a theme here that I heard from both the National Security Minister and the President, that this document stresses respect for human rights, the respect for the rule of law. Two things that we know the National Security Secretariat or Ghana's National Security have been completely bereft of. Do you have faith in that? I mean, how much of an importance is that?
Well, I mean, one is the rhetoric of our aspirational desires, that the operationalization and implementation must be premised on the rule of law and respect for human rights. I think we've been saying this for years. And for the original drafters of this document and those who drew up the concept notes, precisely because of the experience with other cases and in drafting similar documents elsewhere, it was important that the ethos running through the document was on the respect for human rights and because there's an operational lacuna. One is the discrepancy between how security is understood in the lived experiences of ordinary people like you and I, and how it is practiced by the professional security personnel, that is those who seek to azugify us. As national security.
Forgive me, Prof. We have a challenge with the line and struggling to hear. We're going to call you back on hopefully a better line so we could have a clearer conversation to you on this very important document that has just been outdoored today by government. In the wake of all the national security conversations we've been having, we have called it a national security monster. Of course, in the last 2 weeks, we saw the brutalization of the journalists at CTFM. We saw the raid on the casino at Asekragua, where again the journalist was again beating. There are many countless cases of pure assault and disregard for human rights leveled at national security by many lawyers who had clients there. The thinking and the pledge tonight by the National Security Minister, who's speaking publicly for the first time in the back of all the recent controversies, that they are pledging to respect your fundamental human rights. I want to bring in Mr. James Sagaga. When you hear the National Security Minister say that, in the wake of everything that has happened, if you box all that together with what we saw during elections, do you trust him? Do you believe the rhetoric?
Well, Evans, first of all, I must emphasize that the fact that a national security strategy was launched today does not mean that we have suddenly discovered solutions to the excesses that we have all witnessed. I mean, at the level of the conduct of operatives of the National Security Ministry, or if you like, the former, what used to be known as the National Security Council Secretariat. In the past, we have enacted legislation to regulate the activities of vigilantes. I mean, as early as 2020, not too long ago, 2020, we passed the Vigilantism and Other Related Offences Act. But Evans, that law did not cure the mischief for which it was passed. We continue to record, cases of vigilantism, behaviors that are completely unacceptable. And the sad thing is that those at the center of these behaviors are coming from the National Security Ministry. And so I heard Professor Nim talk about the azugufication of something. So there was an azugu, within the presence of the National Security Ministry. He went to Asakragua with tax, so to speak, who unleashed brutality over the operators of a casino. The same National Security Ministry operatives were responsible for the torture of Caleb Kuda in the face of the passage of the Vigilantism and Other Related Offences Act. Now, you'd also recall that recently we passed the Security and Intelligence Agencies Act, Act 1030, in 2020. So you want to ask yourself whether it is enough to pass a plethora of legislation or outdoor strategies, and once the strategy, or if you like, even the laws are promulgated and outlawed, that becomes the solution in itself. My response is that no, that can never be a solution in itself. So the president identified the problem today when he launched the strategy, when he actually posited that, yes, we must ensure that the strategy is implemented, and that with that implementation, you cannot talk about having chopped any success. So the question boils down to the will we have as a country, as a people, to implement the strategy that we have outdone. As for the principles, or if you like, the context within which the strategy itself was passed, or if you like, drafted, I would say that the ideas are very noble. They are talking about the respect for human rights. They are talking about people-centered security, not regime-centered security. So if our security is supposed to be people-centered, then clearly the brutalization of citizens in the name of national security will have to stop. So Evans, the whole issue boils down. Yes, it is important. It is a good step to take to have the security document itself launched. If it is fully implemented, there will be more coordination of our security agencies, the intelligence agencies would have a whole of the nation approach.
I want to bring in
management of our country's security. No question about that.
Yeah, Professor Ainin, is this a game changer for you? But most importantly, as we've heard Ms. Agaga just expressed there, we've seen a government that, even with the white paper suggestions that they accepted, as we discovered with Azugu, they did not implement their own recommendations that they accepted. Do you have faith that this document will be implemented to the letter?
Well, I mean, this document, in making it a success and a living document, and attaining the aspirational intent inherent in it, will be a fierce struggle between the forces that seek to have a national security strategy implemented in a manner that respects the rights of people and listens to the rights of people, and those who think that an opaque, invisible, abusive, disrespectful, and threatening institution must still be in existence. Evans, we are looking at two challenges. One is about the discrepancy between how security is understood, through the lived experiences of ordinary people like you and I, and how it is practiced by the professional security personnel, that is the Azugus of this world. And it is between these two polarized camps that the original and those who drafted the original concept note brought in the issues of human rights and the rule of law. Precisely because of our history and the contentions around power, there's a certain pronounced subjectivity as to what is perceived as an issue that should be tagged as security. So if you look, for example, in the last 20 years, the way that security operatives have behaved, appropriated power onto themselves, it creates a dangerous misunderstanding that security can only be extended to people through violence. And that's wrong. But I think there's also a fallacy here concerning whether we have had documents that sought to regulate the behavior of national security. And I think the National Security Services Act of 1963 gives a clear impression of the visionary leadership of the Nkrumah era that sought to bring state institutions under very rigorous control, albeit not successfully. So this is a first step. There's a lot of training that needs to be done in terms of changing attitudes, in terms of getting honorable members like Angalga who sit on the appropriate committees to play their critical oversight roles by using the power of the purse to ensure that the minister appears routinely before the subcommittee and also on the floor of the House. A more open, accessible, engaging, dialogic ministry and an implementation of a national strategy plan leads to a broader buy-in in which we see the state as the guarantor of our safety, and therefore we are willing to provide the information, intelligence, and in our little ways protect the sanctity of the state. So this is a useful document. It's a first step, but there's a lot of hard work ahead.
Mr. Gaga, let me ask you, there's one of the biggest challenges we've seen in national security is the integration of party political foot soldiers, hooligans, vigilante, individuals in the national security. It came up at the Ayawaso West Wagon, by-election inquiry. You saw the draft and you participated in these consultations. Is there a part of this policy that attempts to address this challenge?
Absolutely. And so clearly, if the document is implemented, we would definitely be inching closer to having some security sector reform, which clearly would address the issue of recruitment into the various security agencies. So yes, the document is a brilliant document. I mean, the experts who were brought together to write the concept notes, as Prof said, did a good job. Ours is to ensure that this document is not kept on the shelves to accumulate dust, but that it is fully implemented. If we implement it, I'm sure most of the challenges that we have as a country with respect to the way and manner our security operatives conduct themselves will be addressed. Intake into the security agencies, yes, it's very crucial, because oftentimes when you have party vigilantes making their way into the various security agencies, their loyalty exactly cannot be said to be to the state. So yes, these are matters.
And let me ask you: does this have bipartisan support? And I ask that because is there a commitment on the part of at least the NDC that should you win power, you will continue with the implementation of this policy? It's something you ascribe to.
No. So one good thing the minister did, and I'll give him credit for that, is that he sought to build bipartisan consensus in coming out with the initial draft. So we were all involved. We participated in the deliberations. And so what you have is not just the handiwork of a few group of people. No, there was broad consultation. And so I do not think that in the event that the NDC takes over the reins of government in this country, will shelve this document. We'll definitely implement it.
I'm grateful, sir. Professor Inning, thank you also for joining us with your thoughts on this. On Newsnight in 3 minutes, Minority is tonight demanding an apology from President Akufo-Addo over the flouting of COVID-19 protocols during funeral of late MPP General Secretary Kojo Owusu-Afriyie. We have details of that, and the ranking member of Parliament Health Committee is accusing government of selective application of the law. All that, plus the Ghana Medical Association's calls for investigation and prosecution of organizers of the funeral. You want to stay with us for all that on Newsnight in 3 minutes.
55, 78, 58, 70. Hey, Charlie. My network is really killing me. I have to pay my uncle's workers via mobile money, but the charges alone, it's about 380 cedis.
Charges alone just to send money? That's $10 of cement already, my guy.